Hey everybody, I am back with my dear friend JJ Virgin. JJ, hello, welcome.
Hello, honey. How are you?
Great to see you. Fantastic. So you said some really powerful truth bombs in the movie, all about, kind of the nature of our food and really how it's become frankenfood. And you are the food intolerance queen. And so we've talked a lot about chemicals and what they do to us and how they impact our health. And the conversation that really needs to be had is the stuff that's in our food that we're taking every single day. I mean, we all know that we should probably, if we're standing by a diesel truck that's gassing right next to us, you walk away and say, I don't, that smell doesn't seem like it's good for me. But what about that bagel? What about that cream cheese? What about the stuff that has gone under the radar that's really messing with us? And you're doing it, man. You are the gal who's got the loudest voice in that space, and you've helped probably millions of people at this point, get out of that mess. And I would love to figure out how to unwind that for the people watching the summit.
Well, it's such a truth if you look at it, because it's not those things, the every once in a whiles that create the problem. It's the insidious things that sneak in every day that are creating the problem. And we've been led to believe, and this is where I get so upset. I think that and it's not just America, it's now the world. We're being duped with misinformation that is taking our health down and our economy down too. Let's face it, you've got 86 million pre-diabetic people, 29 million diabetic people. The cost of that's incredible, not just emotionally and physically, but financially. And it is because of these foods that are sneaking in. And, the worst of all, I think, are these ones that are being touted as healthy foods. The whole wheat bagel, the skim milk, the low fat yogurt with fruit on the bottom, the green drink that says no sugar added. It has 56 grams of sugar, more than a Coke of the same size. The apple juice they're feeding the WIC kids, it's higher in fructose than a soda. This is the stuff that makes me insane, because if you look at it, the number one toxin, the number one poison, the number one drug of choice worldwide is sugar at every age. I mean, little kids are not smoking and drinking. They're getting juice and cookies at their play date. And then if you add into that, when we take to food intolerance, of the top foods that really create issues, gluten and dairy, you look at gluten and dairy and sugar, and they have one massive thing in common. And I think if we start a reframe of looking at them this way, we'll change the world. They're drugs. They're drugs. They have opiate-like effects on the brain. In fact, there was a study by the Connecticut College that looked at Oreos versus morphine. And they found that they were both addictive to these rats. However, given the choice, the rats actually chose the Oreos because they were more pleasurable. And then they went and cracked them open and went straight to that. What is in the middle of an Oreo anyway? What is that goo? It's frightening, is it just drug goo? So, I think we've got to look at the things that we do every single day, because yes, we know to, if the lead pencil breaks open, not to jam it into our arm. We know that if you've got one of those old mercury thermometers, don't play with the mercury. We know to walk away from the bad fumes, but yet every day we're poisoning ourselves, we're toxifying ourselves with the things that we're eating. And that's what's making the difference.
Yeah, so this is such a big thing, and it's such a scary thing for people who may be listening, who go to Costco or their local kind of warehouse place and just buy the things that they've been buying for 20 years and not even thinking about it. And so much of it goes under the radar. Right? We literally I have Abel James here right now, and my wife went and picked up a cheesecake for a birthday party, and Abel's like reading off the ingredients to me. It's like propylene glycol. Why the hell is there
glycol in a cheesecake? What the hell are we doing?
Yeah, would you go to the counter of a deli and say, you know what, I'm going to have some sliced turkey, some propylene glycol, and maybe some rat poison? You would never elect to have that in your food, but because they just put it in something called cheesecake, suddenly it's okay to eat.
Oh my gosh, that kills me. Well, our food, if you look at what's happened over the last 50 years of food, it is crazy pants. I mean, if we could go back and go, and that's where we get in challenges. It's well, my grandmother did this, my mother did this. It's well, grandma didn't have Pop-Tarts, Captain Crunch, aspartame, agave, high fructose corn syrup didn't exist back then. And a lot of these health issues didn't exist back then either. So we can't really say, well, you know, grandma's been making this bread forever, because the flour's different now, the ingredients are different now. It's all a different world. And what's very interesting is, and it's a myth that drives me crazy, it's like, okay, so we go to these warehouse stores because they're A, convenient, but B, you save money. But in reality, it is cheaper to eat whole foods. It is cheaper to go to the farmer's market. It's cheaper to go to the grocery store and go around the perimeter of the store. It is so much cheaper to do that. And so you don't need to go and bulk up on these big boxes of crap at Costco or any of these other, or the grocery store for that matter. That's where you're wasting money and getting, by the way, like, you're not even getting nutrition. I mean, why do we eat? We eat for fuel, right? You know, that is the number one reason we eat. Well, what you're doing is the antithesis. It's anti-fuel for your body. It makes no sense.
So why put propylene glycol in cheesecake? I mean, I don't understand. Like, why would anyone in their right mind put that in a food, and why would anyone in their right mind eat that food? Like, how does that even happen?
Well, if you look at a lot of these labels now, I just did a big thing for the Sugar Impact Diet where I brought in all the bad foods into the house and took pictures of all of them and showed swaps for healthier foods and just showed a kitchen clean out. And I brought normal stuff that the typical person would eat. And, you know, we don't look at these things very often, but when you start to look at the labels, it is shocking what is put in there. Just to make it more palatable. What is the food manufacturer's ultimate goal? I mean, it's a business, right? They want you to buy it again. So they need to do two things. They have to focus on price, and they have to focus on pleasure. So it has to be cheap enough to get you to buy it and pleasurable enough to keep you buying it, which means if it's got some addictive qualities in there and good mouthfeel, you're in great shape. And if you look at a lot of the marketing now where they're dropping the fat, you know, there are, by the way, fat-free Oreo cookies and low-fat Oreo cookies, which I find hilarious. Like seriously, people, come on. But, you know, you're buying on that, and you're not looking what's in there and not putting together this cause and effect. I still think, you know, people aren't realizing that you are what you eat. Right? And you are what you eat, but you are what you put on your body. You are what you touch. You are what you smell. And these things matter tremendously. And where we're really starting to see them matter, I mean, I think the rate of cancer is a clear sign that something's up, and the rate of diabetes, because diabetes, the NHANES study showed that it wasn't the obesity that really was conferring the risk of diabetes. It actually was the toxin stored in the fat of obese people. And we know that the more obese you get, the more toxins you have, and the more toxins you have, the more obese you get. But it's not, well, actually, that's not true. Just because you're obese, you don't necessarily have the toxins. But if you have high toxins, you have a higher risk of obesity because your body's going to store the toxins in your fat. So that's a clear one. So the NHANES study showed that if you were overweight but you didn't have a high toxic burden, you actually didn't have diabetes. So you look at these diseases we're getting and you're going, what the heck is going on? Like, if things were different 100 years ago, what was the big needle marker that was different for everybody? And the big difference was the food. And the big one we can change easily.
So about 100 years ago, all of a sudden we start messing with food and realizing that, you know, we could do things to enhance flavor and output or shelf life and all these types of things. And all of a sudden all these diseases start showing up simultaneously. Surprise, surprise. So what are the major foods? Because I know you've really kind of been, you're like the queen of the elimination diet and really worked on helping people back out of this. Like, where do you start?
You know, what I love to help people do that I think is the most empowering thing ever is to connect the dots between what they're eating and how they feel. And you can't do that with the moderation concept, which makes me crazy. Because if you're eating a little bit, like you would never say to an alcoholic, you know, just have a little sip. You never say that, right? That would be stupid. But yet we say to people who are addicted to gluten and dairy and soy and sugar, just have a little cookie. That doesn't make any sense. So when you look at the top needle movers, what I want to do with the elimination was give people an easy way to do this that would get the foods out of their body, get their hormones back in balance, and give their body time to heal so they then could re-challenge the foods, not because I want them eating them again, because I don't, but because I want them to go, wow, when I eat gluten, I have brain fog or my joints swell. When I eat dairy, my skin's a train wreck, So whatever it is that for them, they start to notice, because, what we found now that maybe I think it's 1 in 133 have celiac and 30 to 40% have gluten sensitivity, although now people are trying to say it doesn't exist, which read what Tom O'Brien wrote about that. That's ridiculous.
What can people do to start avoiding this? I know that there's certain foods that are worse. Where do you go? Where do you start?
I know, because here's the thing, and this is why, honestly, I wrote the Virgin Diet and then did the Sugar Impact Diet, is because a confused mind says no. You just get into this analysis paralysis of what can I eat? Dr. Mark Hyman and I always talk about this, because the number one question we both get asked is like, what can I eat? Because we sit here and we go, don't eat this, don't eat that. Well, that doesn't really help if you don't add the swap. So one of the things that I focused on is, okay, so we're going to say, pull out the gluten. Here's what you can put in its place. Pull out the dairy. Here's what you can put in its place. And what I always encourage people to do is take 3 weeks to do this, to pull these foods out. It's just 3 weeks. This is where you do a little science experiment on your body so you can connect the dots between what you're eating and how you feel and your weight, and see how you do there. But in your mind, I think we can do anything for 3 weeks, right? And so it's a reframe, because if you thought, you know what, I'm never going to eat bread again, I think that sets someone up to fail. But if you say, for the next 3 weeks, I'm going to get rid of the tortillas. I'll put in rice tortillas or coconut wraps. I'm going to get rid of the skim milk. I'll put in almond milk. I'm going to just drop the popcorn. I mean, that's just a silly one. So have some kale chips. So you just do your simple swaps for 3 weeks, and then you stop and you go, let's check it out one by one and see how I feel. Because if you eat something, you go, wow, my energy just catapulted, just did a nosedive down, or my skin's breaking out, or I'm so gassy and bloated, I'm dying here. You think twice. It's a different thing than, just going, oh, I'm just going to have a little bit, or today's a bad day, or I'm going to cheat. That's why those cheat days set us up to fail, because these foods are built to be drugs. When you look at dairy, gluten, and sugar, again, those are my trifecta of, drug addiction in our country. If you have a little bit of that, it lights up the reward center of your brain, and you're going to want a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. These foods have been created to do this. The other issue here, and the other easy thing to do, is try to avoid foods that have ingredient panels.
What? That's like 90% of the stuff in the grocery store.
80% of the food at the grocery store has added sugars. That's before we get into the natural sugars and the carbs, because all carbs except fiber turn to sugar. But if you go and you buy, say, I don't know, some strawberries or some lentils or some wild salmon, it does not have to have an ingredient panel listing the propylene glycol. So an easy way to avoid these things and not spend hours at the grocery store is just not to buy those things. If you even look at, like, wild rice should just say wild rice. Quinoa should just say quinoa. All these things should contain in them. And when they have a ton of ingredients, that also means that you're going to be paying for what that costs to put that whole thing together, both financially and also with your health.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is people always assume that eating well is going to cost too much and they can't afford it. And I know you just did an experiment with Camper where you guys went to the grocery store and did some side-by-side. Please share that with the audience, because it's just, I really think that we need to dispel that myth.
This was so awesome. I mean, first of all, we're losers. This was our Friday night. So it's because I always want to say that, because for some reason people think I live this jet-setty, glamorous life. In reality, there I was at Albertsons on Friday night doing the supermarket challenge, which was awesome. So what we did was we did one cart. Camper got the bad cart, because we thought, what if someone sees me? They won't leave. Yeah. So Camper has the bad cart, and he is pushing it down the aisle, and he is getting, now we didn't go look for the expensive stuff. We looked for what would an average person trying to eat healthy buy. And he put that all in his cart. And I did a week's worth of the Virgin Diet for one person. And it was $36 more expensive to do his cart versus my cart. And I even added in my shakes and bars. So, and I had wild salmon and grass-fed beef. I wasn't going, cheapy cheap. But you eat a more plant-based diet, you save money. And that's one I think no one's going to argue with. Like, we need to eat more vegetables and plant-based foods, right? And you spend the money where you need to, like on the high quality animal protein. That's where you really need to make sure you don't buy junk. And then you go to environmental working group and you make sure that the organics, you're focusing on those clean or the dirty dozen, make sure those ones become organic. Now, I did it again. I took my son this time. I went to the store to buy all the crap for Sugar Impact to do this kitchen makeover. And first of all, my son has now become a sugar evangelist. He is absolutely blown away by how much sugar is in stuff that you would never expect. Again, a great example is Green Machine, because I can say names here. Green Machine it says, it's the power boost, and it says no added sugar. In reality, it's 56 grams of sugar because Green Machine is mainly mango and banana and apple, with some green in there. So it doesn't taste too green. It looks green, doesn't taste green. So my son's looking at all this stuff and he is just blown away. And it is $300 to buy this crap. And there is nothing in there. And this isn't all. I was trying to buy things that people would think are healthy, like fat-free raspberry vinaigrette or a marinara sauce and pickles and stuff. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy where they put sugar, because hey, if you put sugar into a food, you'll buy it again because it tastes really good. And when you get the sugar out of your diet, just like the gluten and dairy, and you pull it out for a while and then you try it, first of all, sugar all of a sudden is like, whoa, that's sweet. But you realize how much these foods are not giving you energy. They're zapping your energy. They're creating a false state of energy where you are relying on this sugar to keep your energy up. And then the minute your body comes down again, which is in 2 or 3 hours, you crash, you have to have it again. So you're creating this drug dependency on these foods.
That's amazing. I mean, I think it's really good business if you're trying to build a Death Star. You know what I mean? Like if you if you're evil and you don't care about people, it's a great business. Just put something addictive in all the foods and make them come back for more. And so, I feel like we're part of this kind of mass experiment where they're messing with us because they know they can, and we need to understand how to back out of that. So rule number 1, look at the ingredients. If there's any added sugar, get the heck out. But I think rule number 2, which is more important than rule number 1 that you're saying, is if it has an ingredient label, don't bother.
Well, so let's say like you want to buy like a jar of crushed tomatoes. It should say crushed tomatoes. So, or you want to buy wild rice, it should say wild rice, or, but for so many of these things, like I am really hooked on squashes. And when I was doing the sugar research, squash is like one of the most powerful foods out there. Very low sugar, high fiber, eat squash. But pumpkin and kabocha squash don't have labels on them. Just buy this stuff. It's just amazing and cheap. So there will be some things where you might have to buy it by a label, like say crushed tomatoes, although you can make your own.
You could crush tomatoes.
Yeah, you can crush tomatoes. Or let's say you're going to buy chickpeas and not soak them. It should say chickpeas. That's all these things need to say. They don't have anything else. Lentil soup should say, like lentils should say lentils. I mean, this is simple stuff. And guess what? The less that's in there, the less it usually costs too. So
you're paying for the added poison and the addictive elements that are already put in there.
Right. That'll make you get it over and over again. I mean, cereal to me is probably one of the most amazing. But I grew up, my nickname growing up was Poppy because of the volume of Pop-Tarts I ate. But then I rotated them with Captain Crunch and Cocoa Puffs.
So you've been there.
I've been there, man. I'm a recovering. I mean, you look at cereal because so many people are like, I'll just have a bowl of cereal, and it's like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, like this little evening tip off. And I go, that's like the trifecta for your brain. It's gluten, dairy, sugar. And now you're eating it right before bed. So your body all night long is going, oh, let's just store fat, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then you do 12 weight loss programs in the next 5 years, wondering why, the miracle, it's just not working, right? And that's a big thing, right? So now here's a question for you, because I'm sure you get this every second of your life, and we're hearing it a lot, is like, okay, you're telling me sugar's the devil. What sugar substitutes are okay? Because there's so much stuff out there about Splenda, and obviously the NutraSweets and the saccharides are kind of on the other side. So what about stevia? We know agave has a glycemic. Yeah, exactly. So people are like, well, this has agave. That's natural. And yeah.
Can I go on my sugar rant?
Let's rant, honey.
let's rant on this. So the number one question I get asked after the Virgin diet was sugar. Because really, when you look at food intolerance, when you look at dairy and gluten and soy and corn and eggs and peanuts, that's much more of there can be a genetic response, an immune response. Sugar is different. Sugar is really coming in and mucking up your hormonal responses and your gut because it's feeding the bad bacteria in your gut and creating candida. And those two things together, feeding candida, feeding the bad gut bugs, can make you crave more sugar and make you better at storing fat. So bad. We all know sugar is bad, but the problem is we've been looking at sugar all wrong because we tend to look at either added sugar, right? We don't look at the natural sugars in food, and we don't look at carbs. So all the pathways, as you know, all sugar, all carbs are going to turn into sugar except for fiber. We can pull the fiber out. Now, all sugar is not created equal. So we've got all carbs turning into sugar, but then we've got this special sugar over here, fructose, that I'm glad now it's starting to come out how evil it is. But if we could get one thing out there, that fructose is the most evil of the evils. It is the Darth Vader of sugar because it goes straight to the liver, bypassing satiety signals. The whole reason we thought it was great is it didn't raise blood sugar, but because it doesn't raise blood sugar, it also doesn't trigger the responses from leptin, insulin, and ghrelin, so you don't know you ate. It's super sweet. It glycates or ages you more than any other sugar. It can create fatty liver. We have kids with fatty liver. That used to be the disease of alcoholics. Not no more. Creates insulin resistance, creates hypertension. So it goes straight to the liver where it makes fat. And the more fructose you eat, the better your body gets at transporting it straight to the liver and making fat. So you've got to look at sugar differently. We have this stupid model that needs to get blown up called the glycemic index, and that's where fructose came out as this, amazing sugar, because glycemic index only looks at a 50-gram dose of a food and then your blood sugar response to it. Well, fructose doesn't raise blood sugar, so everyone thought fructose was then great and agave was this health food. The challenge with the glycemic index is, again, fructose looks good, and who the hell eats 50 grams of carrots? So now all of a sudden carrots look like this terrible food, like a potato, when people eat more than 50 grams of a potato, and they will not, unless they're drinking carrot juice, which is bad, they won't eat that much carrots. So I created a new way to look at sugar, looking at fructose and glycemic load, how much of food you actually would normally eat. And I contrasted that with fiber and nutrient density, and I created sugar impact scales, because it's really about the impact. What is it doing to your insulin? What's it doing to your leptin, to your thyroid? What's it doing to you? Is it creating inflammation, or is it reducing inflammation? Is it creating great energy, or is it causing you to store more fat? Is it making you a sugar burner or a fat burner? What the heck is it doing? And so I created this whole thing so that we would know how to look at sugar, so that we would realize, hey, skim milk is bad. It creates problems. Okay, so it's low on the glycemic index, but it triggers insulin, and it's all sugar. You pull fat out of milk, now what you're left with is the sugar, and quite often we add more. So I think the big challenge, and why we're so confused on sugar out there, is the big thing we're hearing now is, okay, well, no more than 5 to 9 added teaspoons of sugar a day. Well, what if you're like drinking fruit juice all day long? That's not added sugar. And who the hell knows what 5 teaspoons of added sugar looks like anyway? Like, I don't know what's that? And does that mean jam's okay? Jam should be added sugar, but is it, what the hell is it? So that's where I looked at it, and I took 7 categories: grains, fruits, roots, dressings, drinks, sweeteners, no fat, low fat, dairy and diet foods, and went, all right, let's look at all these things and go, what's high sugar impact? Skim milk, tomato paste, juices, jams. What's low sugar impact, and what are the simple swaps? And more importantly, even those of us trying to do well are probably thinking balsamic vinegar is an okay thing. In reality, it's syrup. We might be overdosing on fruit. We know not to do fruit juice or fruit purees or fruit juice concentrates, but we may not be paying attention to the labels as much as we should. And people aren't going to become label monsters. It's a boring nightmare, and you spend forever in the supermarket. So instead, if you know, hey, here are the low sugar impacts, here's where I should live most of the time. I have people taper from high to medium and then go to low for a couple weeks to reset their taste buds, so they start to know food's too sweet, and to get that transport system for fructose gone, so they can't easily transport fructose to the liver and make fat. and really reclaim their taste buds. We have dulled our taste buds with all this crappy artificial sweetener. It's 300 times sweeter than sugar, so now you're craving sugar all the time, and when you eat sweet, you want more sweet. So the answer is definitely not aspartame. It's not the artificials, as we know. They feed bad bacteria in the gut. They can raise insulin just like regular sugar can. They make you crave more sweet. They can be neurotoxic. Not the answer. And they cause calorie dysregulation. When you eat sweet, but you don't get the calories you should, your body goes, what the hell? And you tend to start overeating. So that kind of begs the question of, okay, well then what about things like stevia and monk fruit that don't have calories? And I think we do need to be careful there, because what you don't want to do is keep your sweet tooth primed up. The things I like are, chicory, cinnamon, vanilla, erythritol, xylitol, stevia, monk fruit, because there are benefits to these, glycine. But I also think the bigger thing here is you need to start reclaiming your taste buds, appreciating savoring and spicy, using sour foods, because sour foods take your sweet tooth away. Donna Gates gave me that one. And getting that calmed down, because we are living in a constantly fired up state of I want more sweet. And the more sweet you eat, the more sweet you want. So I have people use those but taper them down, because I don't want them to just kind of live in this like give me sweet state, right?
Right. So you said something, and I know there's someone watching this right now going, hey, wait a minute. An apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? And, in the entire movie, we're talking about going back to nature. And I think we need to quickly talk about what fruit used to look like 200,000 years ago and what we've done to fruit now, and then what our relationship with fruit could be. Because, having apple juice and biting into an apple are two very different things. And I'd love for you to kind of elaborate there.
Thank you. First of all, we've done a really big disservice by making fruits and vegetables the same. Like if you look at now it's called My Plate, but the old food guide pyramid that now became the My Plate and is still stupid, it's now says you should have 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. So I looked at that because the servings include dried fruit, juice, right? And I go, okay, so what you just said here is that raisins are the same as kale. Which should I have? Should I have the banana, the orange juice, or the broccoli, right? So right off the bat, fruit and vegetables are not the same. They're not the same. And non-starchy vegetables are not the same as starchy vegetables. So broccoli is not the same as a potato. So we want to focus on eating loads of non-starchy vegetables, small amounts of low-impact starchier carbs like pumpkin. You can tell I'm like starch queen or squash queen. And then as far as fruits go, I actually take all fruit out for 2 weeks in the diet, except for the non-fruit fruit like avocados and olives and tomatoes that I don't know why they're in the fruit category. But as far as fruit goes, what you really want to look at is how much fructose is in that fruit. It turns out apples and pears are the highest fructose containing fruits. So apple juice has more fructose than a Coke. So you want to look at the forms: fresh fruit only, not dried, which is just sugar, it's just candy, not juice, which is just fruit unwrapped without the fiber, not concentrates. Oh my gosh, you can add fruit juice concentrate or fruit juice puree to any food and not say that you added sugar. You can still say no sugar added.
And it's
How
sweet.
Outrageous is that?
Outrageous. How often does that happen? I mean, is this a workaround for all the industry?
Go rent the store. I have it in my fridge right now. I have the toxic stuff in my fridge, and I can show you the green machine that says no sugar added, and on the back, mango puree and apple juice concentrate. It is disgusting. So how often does that happen? Go look at the no-fat dairy products in there with the fruit juice concentrates and fruit juice purees at the bottom. Go look at the jam that says no sugar added with the grape juice concentrate. Go look. It is everywhere. It's horrible. So after 2 weeks, I let people go back to their fruit. And you want to pick the fruits with the lowest fructose content in them. And actually, cranberries, not cranberry juice cocktail, raspberries, blueberries, pink grapefruit. So I make a list of those, and I put in what are low sugar impact and what are medium sugar impact. And it was all based on fructose, which is not easy to find, I must tell you, because I found many fructose scales and everyone had different numbers. And it depends, of course, on how ripe the fruit is. And then, of course, are you genetically engineering that food to be sweeter? You want to find wild organic fruit, not fruit that has been now changed. First of all, never buy something that's like, what do they have now? Broccoli flour, or like these foods. Stop it, right? Stop.
That's crazy, right?
I'm like, there was a plum apple, you know, like they're blending stuff together. Who knows? It's like genes gone wild, you know? Scary DNA splicing in my fruit. You don't need it. Just eat the whole fruit. Choose the lowest sugar impact fruits as much as possible. It doesn't mean don't eat an apple. It means don't have apple juice. And if you're having an apple, don't have 10, have one, you know. But if you're hypertensive, if you're insulin resistant, I'm going to tell you that you want to really keep your fructose grams as low as possible. You know, like maybe at least under 25 and maybe down to 10, which doesn't leave much wiggle room when an apple has 12 grams of fructose in it.
Yeah, I mean, so once you've had an apple, you've pretty much already kind of saturated and sent a signal to your body saying, hey, how about some fatty liver?
Yeah. You know, it was interesting because I have always been a fan of apples because of their pectins and they heal the gut, but I couldn't really eat them. Only way I could ever eat them was with a little bit of nut butter on them, almond butter or macadamia nut butter, because if I ate an apple alone ever, I was starving within an hour. It made me feel sick. So I've never really been, you know, I've been a fan of apples because they're an easy portable snack, and I always told people to bring some nuts with them, but every time I try to eat them, I'm like, it's making me sick again. It is so weird. And then the worst thing you could do is take a really ripe apple and bake it, right? Now just really intensifying that. So don't do that either.
It's so funny how you take a really ripe apple and you bake it and you put in some dairy, some sugar, and some gluten, and then it's as American as pumpkin pie. And you wonder why obesity has taken over the country, right? It's just every single staple food that we have turns out to be causing problems rather than solving them. So what can we do by triage? I mean, I'm assuming, I'd love to get like a list, like a bullet point list. And obviously, you guys, if you're listening to this, Sugar Impact Diet is JJ's new book. You need to read it because she's been on the cutting edge of doing this for a very long time, and she's bold because she's going places that a lot of people don't want to go, which is looking at the truth.
You know what, Pedram, I'm surprised about this one because as I was diving into sugar, I go, you know, why hasn't anyone looked at the fact that we're using an old model that's making us sick, this glycemic index? Like why, you know, you look at what Lustig wrote about how fructose is bad, but yet it's like, okay, so what? Like, how do we know where it is? What do we do? Right? And the biggest thing that I think that my skill is taking these complicated things and going, all right, so how's this going to work on a daily basis? How I looked at all these books on sugar and I go, they sit there and tell you sugar is bad. Duh, I don't need to know that anymore. What I need to know is what do I do about it and what the heck can I eat? And how do I avoid that time when you go off sugar where you feel like absolute crap, and if you don't have an alternative, you're going to be racing for a cookie within a couple of hours. And so the biggest thing that I'll share is never just try to go cold turkey on this because it won't work. You're hooked on drugs. That's where I taper people from higher sugar impact to medium sugar impact. So critical. But I found both with the Virgin Diet and with this, I ran 700 people through it, that as you start to eat these foods that are like, these are the foods we ate 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. These are like staple foods, not weird foods. As you start to eat them, you're like, oh, I actually like this better. Like, I actually like kabocha squash better than potatoes. It tastes better. I mean, once you eat grass-fed beef, you will not eat that crappy factory beef ever again. You know, so as you start to eat these foods, you realize that this isn't weird food, isn't expensive food, isn't hard to find. You just were in the habits and addicted to other stuff. And once you break that addiction and swap your habits, it becomes easy. And all of a sudden, all those things, that the daily struggle of getting up and going, okay, is today going to be a good day or a bad day? Beating yourself up because you get on the scale and you aren't losing the weight, yet you're trying so hard. Losing faith in yourself, all that becomes a thing of the past. You stop dieting and focusing on this as a hobby. You know, your energy soars and you can go out and do the stuff you're supposed to be doing, which isn't like focusing on, you know, your freaking diet every day. That shouldn't be what we have to do, Right.
It's a real shame that that's all we worry about now, because we're in shell shock. And it's like, you know, I hang out with a lot of healthy people, right? And you go to restaurants and you're just like, oh my God, what can I eat here, right? And it's like stressful all the time to go out and eat, because you don't know what's in your food. You don't know what they're slipping in your food. We just had an incident where we ordered off a gluten-free menu at a hotel, and they brought a gluten dish for my mother-in-law, and it floored her for like 2 weeks. Right? And so people who are sensitive can't eat out, and people who are trying to be sensible are worried about all of this. And it becomes a really big issue when the control of where your food is sourced is not in your hands. And so you really got to take control at the grocery store, and you got to understand where you can make an impact there. And I think that, just getting some recipes that taste good, that,
Yes.
You don't feel like you have to suffer, makes a big difference, right?
Yeah, and you know what? I think the places where you have to be the most careful when you go out is what the heck they're putting on things. So especially with now looking at sugar, the places they sneak in the most stuff are in these sauces and dressings. So you just order lemons and olive oil, and you just X'd out a whole lot of problems, right? You order things without the sauces, just simply grilled. It's like simply grilled great fish and some veggies and a salad, and you're good. It's not hard, It's really knowing what to look for. I did a whole dining out guide for both diets, just because it's like, okay, you just need to know what to look for, and to realize that they want the average person to get hooked on their food. So you have to be aware of that, right?
Well, that's just it. If you realize how insidious it is, then all of a sudden, shields go up. Right? You're like, wait a minute, these guys aren't looking out for my best interest, and as a matter of fact, they're trying to trap my brain. Then the game changes. Then you got to really then the mama bear kind of steps in, right?
I also think that, unfortunately, for a lot of people, like if you read that Sugar, Salt, Fat book, I think that there's a lot of people who are in these companies that really don't know, because you've got, the big companies educating everyone working with them that they're doing great things.
Right.
And so there's a lot of ignorance out there. I mean, if you've got the registered dietitians in California having McDonald's be their primary sponsor for their event and giving them a tour of McDonald's, you have a problem. And that's what happened.
Amen, sister. You get the same thing with pharmaceutical companies financing the medical schools and financing research there, and all of a sudden all the medical algorithms become pharmaceutically oriented. There's no surprise there that now a lot of doctors have become drug pushers, because the people who finance their education have a vested interest in that. Now we have all these great doctors kind of, stepping out and becoming functional medicine doctors and kind of saying enough's enough, people are getting sicker, this isn't working. And so you've been the fitness and the diet industry for a long time saying enough's enough. We've been trying this insane calorie counting stuff for years, and people are not doing well, and they're staying fat or getting fatter. What do we do? And that's when you start looking under stones that have been unturned and finding all kinds of crazy stuff like you found.
Yep. And, the big challenge with the whole drug industry is, it's not that drugs are bad. There's some that are amazing. And it's not that all food is bad. There's some incredible stuff, but it's like, how the heck do you know what you should be doing? And you should, just like in medicine, I love the functional medicine approach, because it's like food first, supplements first, use meds where you need to. And with this, it's like food first, get the go as whole foods as possible. In some cases, you can buy the bottled salad dressing if it's got no crap in it, if you know the manufacturer. And what I'm hoping the most is that all of this will force manufacturers, just like if you look at what's happened over the last couple of years, all these gluten-free options have come out. Now, unfortunately, most of them are faux health food. They're garbage. I always say, if you weren't eating cookies before, please don't start, right?
Right.
But
they're healthy cookies.
It's like ridiculous. I'm just hoping that we can start a movement now on the sugar front. And the big word there is it's got to be more than looking at added sugar, because it's sneaking into places you'd never expect. And you can take back control of your health by not being ignorant on any of this stuff, and just not accepting things the way they are, and realizing that something may say healthy on the label or have little grains or be green, and that doesn't mean anything. Or say all natural, or say no sugar added, right?
oh, but that's good for me, right? And the problem is you're so compressed for time that you just read that little buzz line, chuck it in the cart, and keep running into your busy life, wondering why you're so tired and don't have energy for anything. And maybe if you looked at the labels and were a little more discerning about your food, you wouldn't feel so crappy and be in a hurry to get around so often because you're more efficient during your day.
Well, we just made shopping lists so that people wouldn't even have to do that anymore.
Fantastic.
And that's all. And I'm just trying to get the truth out on it. I just had a client who went on one of these green smoothie cleanses, and the green smoothie cleanse has you doing about 5 fruits a day. And he couldn't figure out why he was feeling worse and gaining weight. He's like, okay, well, you've got no protein and you've got no fat. You're just doing a little bit of vegetable and a truckload of fruit every day, right?
Chances are, if you're not feeling well on a cleanse or a diet, it's probably not serving you.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, think back to caveman. I mean, we look at the movie and you think about like our ancestors, they would eat a plant and be like, ooh, that made me not feel well. They would never touch that plant again. Whereas for us, it's like, well, I'm just going to do that for 10 days because, you know, somebody told me it's good for me.
It must be good because I feel like crap.
Yeah. And the innate intelligence of my body doesn't mean anything. I'm just going to listen to some authority or some whoever makes these suggestions. So, JJ, you're so fun. I could do this for hours. We're going to help people help themselves by getting the Sugar Impact Diet and all the things that would help them kind of navigate the grocery store. I know that you've got a couple awesome bonuses for the summit that will be there. And so, what's the best way to find you if someone's like, "Oh my God, I need more of that gal right now"?
I hope everyone's feeling that way. JJVirgin.com is the best one hit to go to, and then we have everything off of that site, and we will be giving you great stuff. You have great bonuses. So I just want to make it easy for people to do this and not have to get to the grocery store and get paralyzed. So we'll make it simple to put this into action.
Awesome. Sister, you are fighting the good fight. You've been doing it for years, and I'm happy to be able to call you my friend. Thank you so much for sharing yourself in the movie and in the summit and just being awesome.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for your great work, man.
Thank you.